Today we're going to be looking at creating bar and line graphs. So in this worksheet I'm going to do 2 with you, and then the last 2 are going to be on your own. Whatever you don't finish in class today is going to be your homework for tomorrow. So the first one that we have here, it says graph the following information into a bar graph. Label and number the x and y axis appropriately and complete the graph below. So we have months, September through February, and we have number of deer. Okay, so even though it tells us this is a bar graph, we can know that because I'm dealing with comparing number of deer. Okay, so what is our independent variable? We always talked about, or yesterday we talked about how our independent is always on the left side, which is our x-axis. So our independent variable is the month. Okay, our dependent variable is always on the right side of the table, is on our y-axis, so that is number of deer. Okay, so let's go ahead and start filling out our graph here. I know my independent variable month goes on the x-axis, so we're going to call this down here months. And our number of deer is our dependent on our y-axis, so we're going to put that over here on the side. Okay, so we need to go ahead and label our months. Well, I have 6 months listed for you all, and I have 10 spots on my graph. So it's not going to work like what we did yesterday where we did every other one. 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, because if we go here, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to have 2 right next to each other. We're not allowed to extend the graph in any way. So we're going to go ahead and just use the first 6 boxes. That's going to be over half of the graph, so it works. Okay, so we're going to label our months. We have September, October, November, December, January, and February. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get those labeled. Then we need to number our y-axis, and in order to do that, we need to look at our highest number of deer. Well, our highest number is 38. Okay, so again, we have 10 boxes here. If I went up by 3s, I only get to 30 at the top, so that's not quite enough. If I go up by 4s, I get to 40 at the top, and that is high enough to make a bar for 38. Okay, so I will accept if you go up by 4s. I will also take if you go up by 5s. 5s are also okay. Okay, so I'm going to go up by 5s just because it's easier to count. Again, if you want to go up by 4s and you want to create your graph that way, that is just fine. Even with going up by 5s, with my highest bar being 38, that's still using more than half of my graph. Okay, so that's why 5s are still okay. Okay, so we have these labeled, we have these numbered and categorized, so now let's go ahead and write our title. So remember, our title is the effect of independent on dependent. So our title here is going to be the effect of, we're going to say the month on the number of deer. So now we have everything categorized, labeled, we have our scales, so we can go ahead and graph our information. So in September, we had 38 deer, so that is close to 40. In October, we had 32 deer, so that's closer to 30. In November, we had 26, so that's just a little above 25. December, we had exactly 20. January, we had exactly 15. And February we had 12, so that's in between 10 and 15, but a little bit closer to 10. Okay, so there's our bar graph. If you guys need to pause the video at this point to make sure you have everything, you may do so. Okay, so go ahead and looking at our next page. This one says graph the following information in a line graph. Again, label a number x and y axis, completing the graph below. So this time we're talking about number of days and number of bacteria. So our independent variable, just like before, is on the left side of our table, and it goes on the x-axis. So our independent variable is the number of days. Whereas our dependent variable is on the right side of our table and goes on the y-axis. So our dependent variable is the number of bacteria. Okay, so now we can go ahead and label our graph. We know that our independent variable goes on our x-axis, so number of days is going to go across the bottom. And then number of bacteria is our dependent variable. It's going to go on our y-axis. Okay, we'll go ahead and do our title next. So we have the effect of independent on dependent. So our title is going to be the effect of independent, which is number of days, on the number of bacteria. Sorry, guys. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and put a scale or number both of our x and y axis. So when we talk about number of days, we have numbers 1 through 6. So again, I have 6 categories and I have 10 boxes. So we are not going to be able to skip a box because I will not have enough room. I'll end up having to draw extra onto my graph, and we're not allowed to do that. So we can go ahead and just put our numbers on each line. Okay. Please be careful with a line graph. Your number of days matches up exactly with a line. It's not in between like a bar graph. With a line graph, our numbers are directly below the line. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can go ahead and use these numbers because they're already going up by ones. So our scale is good to go. We don't have to change it. Okay, but what we do need to look at is our number of bacteria. And our biggest number is 200. Okay, so we need to figure out what my scale needs to go by to get to 200. That's a lot bigger than what we've done lately. So let's just start with tens. If I go up by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, that only gets me to 100. I need twice as big as that. Okay, so what if I go up by 20s? That's twice as big. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180, 200. So that is going to work. That's going to be our best and easiest scale to use. So I can go up by 20s. Okay. So again, we're creating a line graph, so make sure you're really careful to pay attention to what type of graph you're creating so you don't accidentally do a bar graph here. Okay. So at 1 day, we have 4 bacteria. That's going to be really low on our graph. It's really close to 0. 2 days, we have 16 bacteria. So that's a little closer to 20, but still not quite at 20. Once we have our 2 points, we can go ahead and connect them with a line. At 3 days, we have 40 bacteria. That's exactly on a corner. At 4 days, we have 80 bacteria. At 5 days, we have 100 bacteria. And at 6 days, we have 200 bacteria. Okay? You do not have to go any farther on this graph this way. We also don't know how much bacteria there was on day 0, so you cannot go left either. Okay, so make sure you're not connecting this down to 0. Okay, so again, you guys are completing the next 2 pages. We have a bar graph for the next page, and then a line graph for the following page. Again, whatever you don't finish is your homework for tonight.